Good morning, everybody. I'm Elise here as another Truth on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to this audio only commentary. I do appreciate the time that you have taken to come listen to me. I want to issue a content warning for this video because I might be bringing up sensitive topics around the Zav Girl situation, and it could be very triggering. I would suggest that if you are sensitive to these topics, or if you're not an adult, please don't listen because it could be very hard for you. I do appreciate you coming by. You can always come back at another time. And another thing is that when I talk about stuff like that, I can go from 0 to 100 very quickly. I'm not a professional in this at all. I work through this with my intellect and my feelings, which are very powerful forces in my being. Sometimes I might emanate some swear words, so there might be some ad hominem attacks. And it's not very professional, but it's just in the course of talking about stuff like this. Now, I realize that this has been um, on the minds of people. People have come out and spoke out against it. It actually makes me feel very hopeful that communities are pulling together to draw some of these lines that we need to in our society to protect the most vulnerable members of it. Over the weekend, there was a horrific shooting in a town called Hampton, Georgia. I didn't know about this tight-knit community until this tragedy occurred. I didn't understand a community which is quite diverse and rich for love for its members, its residents. And as I and as I saw and witnessed from law enforcement and people there to protect the community, this was completely in support of the community, of the survivors and families of this horrific shooting. Now, since this was reported, the shooter um, the shooter died, and 2 police officers were additionally injured. So there appears not to be a threat anymore. I don't know what the circumstances were, but I saw this level of love and compassion for the victims, families of the victims, and the community at whole as a first approach to safety. This wasn't about parading the person who did this. This wasn't about sensationalization. This was a sense of loyalty. A sense of love, care. Oh, yeah, loyalty for the community and compassion. They particularly addressed keeping the community safe for the elderly citizens and for single mothers. Things you don't normally hear about, people you don't normally hear about in the process of protecting a community. It's tragic when this happens, because it happens a lot. But the representatives and law enforcement and people there who work for the community have shown what it's like to be people first organizations. And that's the way it should be, with compassion, love, consideration for communities of people who are otherwise ignored or marginalized, thinking about their safety and well-being. An example of decency and care and love that we don't see too much in these kind of pressers or in the media. Nobody was exploited in this reporting. It's the way it should be. It should be about putting victims and victims' families and the community first when these things happen. These things shouldn't happen. But it's about supporting people through a difficult time. It reminds me when I was a single mother early, when I was a young parent, and how scared I was a lot because I was essentially alone and worried for my safety, and some incidences happened. Um, and I wish I had that I felt that level of protection and care. Now I'm in the position where I want to be a part of that world in whatever capacity that I can do to ensure no one else is scared. The reason why I'm saying this is because there are people in the true crime community here on YouTube who are a model of what the town of Hampton is for its citizens. They care, they put people first. Details about the crime where people were found, things like that. It's not the way it is spoken with a people first approach, a compassion first approach. They don't exploit anybody. In fact, I've seen law enforcement recently that have come out and talked about the true crime community in regard, especially to the Zav Girl situation. It's not putting down really the whole true crime community, not expecting it to shut down, but that there are a few bad apples in this group. I agree with that. There are a number of people who are very exploitative and thrive on talking about certain details they shouldn't. They feel like people should know about that to understand the hideousness of it. Now, one of the other vulnerable groups in our society are children. It's children. And children have a hard enough in this society um, with being approached, hassled, stalked, and all of those horrible things that happens. Their rights are not considered, their feelings are not considered, their outcome once they reach maturation. It's not a concern for people who prey on them and stalk them and exploit them. We have seen as of late a number of examples of that, and some here on YouTube. And YouTube actually does fuck all about it. Taking away advertising money, it's a good way to stall somebody. I do support a complete cancellation and obliteration of people's channels once it comes to light that they are grooming children or exploiting children for profit or for personal disgusting, wishes, whatever. With the situation with Zav Girl, in my opinion, is no different than any other child exploitation case. Of course, there are different ranges of it. I'm not a legal expert. I know the difference between SA, or sexual assault, abuse, all of those things, and so on. But there's been a lot of that. YouTube stars taking upon themselves to use their power to manipulate, malign, and abuse children, to more dangerous family channels that use their children as way to make money, and sexualizing their children in ways that kind of circumvent the TOS or the community guidelines or standards on any platform. With Zav Girl was a little different, but still, it's um, to me, it's on the same line of that, where a child's remains were paraded for the public for profit. I am not certain how Zav Girl got her hands on material she should not have, how that information was transmission to her. I am not quite clear what the Freedom of Information Act can or cannot disclose. I have seen different types of information about that. Usually, with these kinds of requests for murder cases and things like that, I mean, there are typed transcripts of it and things like that. It's not necessarily covered under the Privacy Act in that case, and there would be a court order needed not to release certain information. That was clearly the case in the Jean Benet Ramsey case, and somehow people got a hold of some information or photos or something like that and exploited that little girl, and the images of it and everything were taken by dangerous people, by people with bad intentions for their personal lust, their personal worship of a child, whatever. That information is readily available. Other YouTubers have talked about this problem. Now, there is a possibility that Zav Girl could be in a lot of trouble, because what she did was she somehow gotten receipt of these photos, and it's believed it was something that should not have happened, that comes with a heavy price. It's considered a felony. Um, According to a lawyer who makes content on YouTube. Um, and that in itself is one thing. But once that information leaves the office, whether she gets it by mail, email, whatever, I'm not sure how they do that. I've never requested it. Zav Girl had it in her hands. She had photos, whatever. I didn't see this content, by the way, that Zav Girl made. I'm not entitled to see it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't even know that she had accessed it until the news came out, until that information was made available. So she took this information, including autopsy videos, photos, whatever, photographs, and used that apparently in content and put that content behind a paywall. And in her mind, she thought $3 was a good asking price for that. $3 for access. And we know how it goes when these pieces of content get released behind a paywall. They end up being leaked again anyway. People capture it and spread it around. There are sick people out there, disgusting people, evil people who would love nothing more than to get their hands on this material. What happens in that situation is that it re-victimizes the families. They have to see it play out over and over again. They have to see people profiting from this suffering. They have to see all of these horrible things over and over again. This is something that Zav Girl didn't consider, or she didn't want to consider. Her excuse was it was a matter of scientific inquiry, a detached view of it. To me, that was a really dumbass way of thinking. This is somebody who is supposedly educated, has an undergraduate degree. I don't know if she has anything beyond that, in psychology. And an undergraduate degree is a difficult degree to get. I mean, it gets more difficult when it gets older, but usually an undergraduate degree, it's where you kind of find yourself. You learn how to research. You learn how to um, kind of navigate the world, navigate the academic professional situation, no matter where you are, no matter your age, where you are in life, in doing an undergraduate degree. So she would have had the rigors of an education and would have learned about how to use information and researched, especially in the subject that she studied. You would think that she would have employed that in her thinking. But I guess not all schools are alike. And, I mean, even some of the worst people in the world have managed to get an undergraduate degree. Imagine to get PhDs, manage to become professors and all of this, and misuse and use people's trust to get to their loved ones and things like that. I'm not saying Zav Girl's on that level, but I don't know if Zav Girl's intention was good or not. I tend to think that she, like many other reprobate YouTubers, wanted to profit off the suffering of others. There's a lot of that going on. The Colleen Ballinger situation is one of them. So Zav Girl's excuse for this was based on education, or she said it was about education or scientific inquiry or anything. You would think that with as much research as she's done in some of her videos, although she has been problematic quite recently, you would think that she would do some basic research. Is this a good idea? Am I supposed to be in possession of these photographs? Am I supposed to have this kind of information? Is this even good to publish out there? Is it going to re-victimize families? Let me do some research about it. It took me 5 minutes to find that research online. 5 minutes. She could have gone to a library. She could have done all of these things to find out about autopsies in general, how they are performed. There would have been no reason to use Gannon's autopsy for discussion. He is a child. He is no more. He has not given consent, and neither has his parents. There would have been some act of decency on her part, especially since how she values her own family. You would think she would employ that love and compassion for other families in the community at large here on YouTube. Since she is seemingly so protective against people who she said are threatening her, which I don't condone. I don't condone doxing, abuse, or anything like that. That is completely wrong. That is awful. Don't lose yourself in going against this loser in any way. Don't. She's not worth it. The family have nothing to do with it. Leave them out of it. Have some compassion. But she does defend her own family in that community post. Well, that community post isn't there anymore because that was quite embarrassing as it is for her. But that was probably very one of the most honest things she posted, because she really outed herself as a selfish, disgusting, self-centered human being. And she did try to center herself in this from all the backlash. She did lie to the public and say that this is very divided. At that time, it wasn't divided. The response to what she posted for profit, for alleged scientific inquiry, was overwhelmingly against her. Overwhelmingly. Very, very. I've only seen maybe one or two actually defending this as scientific inquiry. And I would question their sense of decency and care and other things. That's a red flag for me. And then she went on to said that, her family was being threatened. I'm going to take a break and all this and that to protect them. Well, I mean, first of all, it's not the first time one of these reprobates on YouTube have used their families or their family as a shield against criticism and using their family as sort of as a means to show other people that they are protected from themselves. That they suggest that their family is part of that enablement, sharing the blame, so to speak. And Zav Girl would probably do that. But she didn't consider how this would affect the Stauch family. Now, Gannon's parents were very, very, they were at the forefront of this. They fought really hard for his rights. They fought very hard for him, and they were his biggest fans and advocates, especially his mom. I've seen more of his mom, actually. That doesn't mean that his dad isn't. His dad spoke out recently in an interview on a news program about this situation, and he was asked whether or not he more or less would sue this creator, Zav Girl, for this. And he said at this point he's so exhausted after 3 years of going through this hell, waiting for the system to put together a case. Everything that all the processes that have to go on, and it's affected who he is as a person, financially, emotionally, mentally, and he. It sounds like he doesn't have the wherewithal to do it. But there's been such an outcry for investigators or for law enforcement or whatever to look into this thing with Zav Girl. So it was said by the same lawyer that I spoke about before, or one of the news agencies. I can't remember where I got that information from. I need to do better with that. Um, I don't know if that's in process or anything, because, there's no reason for Zav Girl to use this information at all to exploit Gannon's situation and death. There's no need. No one needs to see an autopsy of children unless they want to become a coroner. And there's some things, unfortunate things, they're going to have to learn and study in their time. But still, once this information gets out, it gets into the wrong hands. And it further victimizes the families. That's not something that Zav Girl considered, what impact it would have. And now Mr. Stauch he said he can't go on YouTube anymore now. He can't even enjoy something simple without being constantly reminded of his son's horrific end instead of the celebration of his son's life. Zav Girl's not a scientist. It's okay to be curious about things. That's why you go to a university to learn more. It's why you can go to the library, get data, learn about these kinds of things from scientists. There's nothing to learn from or to be gained from by showing pics of a deceased child in a certain state of a human process. There's no reason for it other than for her to make money. And all this thing that she put it behind a paywall so that people couldn't access it is nonsense, because she could have easily researched it, knowing that she has enough research skills or the sense to look into it, what this could do. Because as we know from other situations, stuff behind paywalls, unfortunately, can get in the hands of unscrupulous people in a means to harm or hurt people. I can't say for certain if it was Zav Girl's intention to hurt the Stauch family, but unfortunately what she did has catastrophic consequences, and consequences that doesn't affect her in the way that it's going to affect the family she betrayed. But she wants sympathy for her family. And I have sympathy, because if her family has nothing to do with this, as far as I know, they don't have anything to do with this. They shouldn't be in the sidelines, because there are a lot of people, a lot of families who have family members who do terrible things. They're not always the reason for that. We shouldn't associate their family member with anything else other than the individual making a choice to do something. It's my opinion that the only reason why Zav Girl posted this information was to make money from it, because she put the effort into getting the information and paying for it. I don't know how that was done in this case, how she was able to access certain information she had no business getting in the first place or receiving in the first place. So there was a number of things had gone wrong, and now the last amount of privacy Gannon could get at this point, as he had lived on earth, as he left this earth, as he joined eternal peace, if there is an afterlife. I'm not sure how the family believes, so I want to respect their beliefs. But the last privacy he had was destroyed. Zav Girl often points out other people are doing it on YouTube. No, I haven't seen anything like that on YouTube. There are people who've put things behind paywalls, charging memberships, whatever, to have access to certain things. But Zav Girl should be concentrating on her own behavior. A complete disconnect from any level of cognitive empathy for that family. A complete disconnect is there. Isn't detachment. This wasn't about inquiry. This was about sensationalizing the last positions in, in Gannon's earthly life, which should have been private, which should have been protected, which should have been buried in files so no one could ever get to it. And this reprobate ruined it. And now this family, now the surviving families, and even families of other murdered children, taken children, have spoken out against it. This brings up a lot for them. This brings up a lot for them as well. It brought up a lot for the community. There's a global outrage about this. Anybody who followed the Stauch case globally. I mean, this is how this little boy has affected everybody. His life on earth, that little boy struggled for life, being born. And his parents did their level best in whatever the situation was to bring up this little boy with a level of safety and happiness he deserved. I believe that. Doesn't matter what the situation was. Families are complicated. Adults go through some difficult things, and sometimes there are difficult choices that have to be made. But there's no doubt that his parents fought for him. His parents fought for him his whole life. His whole life, from the time he was born till the time he prematurely left. And you have this piece of shit that you see here. One of others, I'm sure, perverting that by exploiting the most vulnerable point of this child's life. Pretty despicable. And this person has the audacity to limit her apologies. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I have my boundaries, and that's it. I don't care about your boundaries, but I care about mine. Only supporting better comments. Saying that they were sorry, they're going to do better. That isn't enough. In my opinion, Zav Girl should face the full consequences of what she has done. The consequences where she has to pay for this out of pocket, out of her freedom, out of a channel. Not her life, not her well being. That she has to work on. She has a right to work on that. But she doesn't understand the seriousness because she doesn't want to. It's about protecting herself. And she's like, I'm going to move on from this now. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to do this anymore. I already apologized. That's it. That's not enough. I hope she is thorough. I hope there is a legal inquiry into this. I hope Zav Girl does lose her channel at this point because she crossed a line. There are a lot of controversial people that say obnoxious things. They're a pain in the ass. And, they managed to stay on YouTube. I'm not for canceling everybody who has a different opinion, but there's a difference between having a different opinion and doing shit like this. And Zav Girl's attitude about this has been nothing short of consummate selfishness, of exploiting a child in death for cash. She knew well enough to research, to examine, is this something appropriate I should be posting on Patreon? Is this something that I should be doing, considering what the Stauch family and what the community's already endured? Who is going to be in possession of these images? What is going to happen? No, that wasn't on her mind. She wanted to make money from it. And Patreon nuked her ass really fast. And I'm grateful for that. I wish YouTube would do the same thing at this point because she crossed a line. There is no coming back from exploiting children. There should never be a way back in from exploiting children. They should be permanently barred from creating any content because they pose a danger to the public. Now, I'm not saying that Zav Girl is akin to Colleen Ballinger, let's say. But what Zav Girl did is she did exploit a child for cash, a child in a vulnerable position. Just because a child is no more doesn't mean that they deserve to be re-victimized in death. And neither should that happen with the families and survivors. It's not about cancel culture. I'm getting so sick and tired of that word being used, that term being used, for when there's any legitimate outrage for a person's behavior. I mean, I personally can cancel anybody I want. I do that by not being a subscriber anymore. I have every right to do that if I don't appreciate that. That doesn't mean that I call out for mass cancellation. I am, however, hoping that platforms would take this seriously and nuke these people's channels and bar them personally because they do pose a danger to the public, especially to more vulnerable people. So Zav Girl's apology was nothing more than damage control for her. It has nothing to do with compassion, feeling what she had done to the family. She's essentially kind of putting responsibility for people back on people for speaking out against her rather than her taking accountability. These people, like roaches, they don't give up. They just keep coming back. They keep coming back. They'll find a way to survive on the platform. There are other things that Zav Girl can do, like reevaluating herself, getting the help that she obviously needs, taking a full accountability, making reparations somehow, paying restitution, being held accountable in a court of law. Those things will help her. But the damage is done, and those photos are out there, and any pervert on the planet now can access them, I'm sure. So the damage is wide and great, and it compromises further the safety of children in other situations or similar situations, in my opinion, and pretty much from what I've researched. Anyway, that's it for this. I know it's late. I was supposed to do this a couple of days ago. Sometimes I wait for things. Sometimes I just get caught up doing other things and I don't follow up with it like I say I would. I don't want to just come out right away all the time. Um, so, yeah, there's that. Take care, be well, and look out for yourselves and others. Bye bye.